Hello, everyone. Welcome to Opinions New by Dr. Frank Ph.D. This is Frank. Okay. In this episode, I want to talk to you about the rent strike. Rent strike in the city of Wuhan, in China, Wuhan, Hubei province, and also the rent reduction program in Taiwan to compare and contrast the two systems across the Taiwan Strait. Right? We know that since the CCP epidemic or pandemic and the Wuhan virus, you know, the situation seems to be easing right now over in China. But even before it's fully, you know, fully reduced the situation, the government, the Chinese Communist government has required the companies, businesses, and stores, to reopen, right away, right? I think what the government had in mind was that as long as the businesses are reopened, the companies are running, shops are running, and then the tax revenue would come in, nonstop. And then since those people now, when they have money, they have income, they'll forget about the tragedy, and they'll forget about, who was really, was truly responsible for the spread of this pandemic, right? They may also believe in the government's propaganda and forget about everything. And then they also may start to pay tribulation, may tribulate, may they may also, feel that it's a government or communist government who is actually having everything under control, and China is doing better than the rest of the world. Right? But I think that many people are getting more clear in mind right now. I think they know they're getting the truth, and they're finding the truth. They're collecting evidence. I heard that many people in Wuhan, they are collecting evidence about the number of people infected and number of deaths, death rate, and all these numbers are, considered secret and tightly covered up by the government. So these people are trying to get those information and reveal it, to the outside world. Right? And also, there are companies, that reopened, business reopened, and then the managers or directors, owners of companies soon found out that they have no order, right? Because their orders, their orders were usually from America, from Europe, from Western countries. Now they open it, and then some factories experienced, infections again. They have to close again, and some open but found no order coming, then they have to close again. Right? So these people who seems to have regained the job and then lost again, they are really the force that the government is afraid about. They're really concerned about this rising unemployment that may cause, instability in society. Right? And also, what I found that interesting is that some of the business owners, small business stores, business vendors, merchants, they are asking for rent reduction or rent elimination, from the landlord. Yeah. And not only in the city of Wuhan, but also in the city of Guangzhou in Canton, in Guangdong province near Hong Kong. Right, many hundreds of thousands of people from Wuhan are running small stores or garment factories in Haizhu, in Guangzhou, and since they have no business, many cannot pay the rent. They go on strike and ask for a reduction in rent. Right, kind of like similar to what we have seen, sporadically in America, that some merchants are calling for a rent strike. Okay? But the Chinese, renters or merchants, business owners, they were crushed. They're crushed by the police. And when I first heard about the, rent strike in Wuhan, I actually felt somewhat puzzled because, for those business owners, small business owners, they might be private citizens, having a store to sell something, operate a restaurant or eatery, or provide some services to the citizens in Wuhan, right? And they want their rent eliminated or reduced. But what about the landlord? The landlord, they need the sympathy too, right? I'm sympathetic to the renters, but also I'm sympathetic to the landlord, the owners of those shopping centers, because they may have a mortgage on their back too, on the shopping center, right? And they have to pay that mortgage. They have to pay for the utilities in the public space in the shopping center, and they have to pay the salaries or wages to those management people who manages the shopping centers for them, and the securities, janitors, cleaning staff. They have to pay that too. If the renters would pay, and because they are afraid that they are going to go bankrupt and they don't pay, then what about the landlords? And if they don't have enough renters paying the rents, they may go bankrupt as well, right? So they're all, if they're all private business people, entrepreneurs, so why are you going on onto the street, go on the street to have a strike on that? You can just talk to the business owners, landlords, right? So that's why I feel a little bit unclear about this. Not unable to completely understand the motive or their reasoning. Right? Of course, in America, if you have a car shopping center, you have many tenants, store owners, they want to go on with a strike and ask for a rent reduction or a free rent, and it's probably you can go. It's your free speech, for your right to strike, but you probably don't get much support from the public or the media, because the relationship between you, the landlord, and the tenant is a commercial one. Is has nothing to do with government or nothing to do with the taxpayers, right? You have a contract, right? You have a contract. If one of you cannot comply with it, will cannot go through with the contract, and you cannot pay the rent, you may be evicted, right? Or your deposit may be confiscated, right? That could be fine also. And there's this, we have a commercial court, business court to deal with that, right? But I think I've been driving around in the city where I live, Johns Creek, Georgia. It's a northeast Atlanta suburb. I've been going around to visit those stores to see. Many of them are closed. Many of them seem to be many store shops seem to be empty. They moved out because they're out of business. But I haven't seen many people asking for like a rent reduction or go on a rent strike. Maybe occasionally. But recently, what I heard from China, more detailed information about China, shows that those people actually have those tenants, business owners, small business owners in Wuhan, they have their legitimacy because the landlord or the owner of those shopping centers, they're not private citizens, or they're not private companies. They're actually the state, the government, the city, provincial government of China, right, of Hubei and Wuhan. Because on Twitter, I found that in Wuhan, the merchants say, we can't stand it anymore. Right? We can't bear it anymore. All the business are gone. Right. The reason, the landlord, the state-owned companies, enterprises, the city government, refuse to even negotiate the rent. Right. They were talking about there's a place called the Light Valley, kind of like a similar to like Silicon Valley, but called Light Valley. I think it's called Light Valley of China. That's the East Lake New Technology, district of Wuhan, right? And that's where the strike or the demand, the parade was going on. It's actually that this is one of those high tech park designated, invested by and approved by the Chinese government, the central government of China. They want to build that the East Lake New Technology Park as as a place for the photo electronic industry, of China to compete, globally. So it's actually government-owned shopping centers and those mega shopping malls, things like that. So the merchants, they're doing the right thing in demanding or asking for the government for rent reduction, because that's what all the business in everywhere, America as well, did, in case of this emergency. Okay? But it's really just a matter of, when huge disaster like this, pandemic strikes, what should the government do? What should governments do? How could the government help those businesses affected, right? And those individuals affected, right? In normal countries, like we have seen that the governments are actually subsidizing or giving cash outright to small businesses, to individuals, and the government also encourages large companies, to open their wallet, to help, to donate. We have seen your federal government asking large corporations, large retail chain stores to cooperate by providing their parking lots for the virus testing, for tests, right? And the cash payment to individual citizens in America, we know, is $1,200 per person if your income is below $99,000 a year. And so family of 3 or 4, you could get $3,000. In Japan, we have seen that, the government is paying citizens 100,000 Japanese yen per person. 100,000 Japanese yen is about, $1,000. In Taiwan, the government is also paying its citizens not $1,000, but several $100s. I heard. Okay? But only in China, the government refused. Chinese Communist government refuses to pay anything cash payout to its citizen. They only gave out some coupons for people to use. Okay? The reason I want to talk about this is really I want to compare and contrast the rent reduction or rent strike issues or programs in China versus in Taiwan. Where both places, the majority of the citizens are Chinese people of Chinese origin. Okay? In Taiwan, they actually had rent reduction 375, called farmland 375 rent reduction program, right? Or it's simply 375 rent reduction program. And also there's public land sales to the farmers. I know many people from China may now know about this, may never heard about this, but I think this is important for them to know, because also in the post-communist era in China, people may want to learn what Taiwan did, and do the same in mainland China. Okay? This 375 rent reduction program was carried out by the nationalist government of Taiwan, in Taiwan, Republic of China, the nationalist or Kuomintang KMT government, right? It's part of their land reform, right? And it's a way of regulating the leasing of private farmland. The so-called 375 rent reduction includes there's a term of 6 years. For 6 years, the landlord, during the 6 years cannot terminate the lease. They lease this land to farmers to to you know to produce the stuff, right? Their own crops. This 375 rent reduction program actually started in mainland China when the nationalist government was in control, in power in mainland. Okay? When they were defeated by the communists, they flew, they went to Taiwan, and then they actually started a new program, another program, and it's called the 375. But it's actually a successor of let's say, or copy of this 25 rental production program in China, in mainland China. Was a 25 rental reduction program. In China back that time, between landlord and the farmers, they normally divide the proceed 50% to each. So if you a farmer, you rent the land, lease the land from the landlord, you produce, corns or whatever, rice, you give half that to the landlord and half for the farmer themselves. Okay. And then there's a 25 rent reduction program, means that the part that supposed to go to the landlord is reduced from 50% to 25%. That's why it's called 25 reduction program. In Taiwan, it's 375 reduction, meaning the rent is 37.5%. Okay, that's actually is a reduction in the proceeds of the landlord, and also that benefit to the farmers. In Taiwan, before the nationalist government moved over, it was before China. Taiwan was occupied by the Japanese, for 50 years, I believe, right? And during that time in Taiwan, there's not much land available, and there are many people, right? If you own 4 jia, or that's the Chinese term there to measure the land size of the land, or about 4 hectares. If you have own 4 hectares of land, and you're considered the landlord, basically, right? 4 hectares, right? And also the landlord had a lot of power, tremendous power, because they could choose which farmers to lease their land to, and they set very harsh conditions, right? So the nationalist government, under Governor Chen Cheng, he demanded that the landlord cannot ask, full amount of the proceed from the land, from the farmer, from the tenant. Right? The tenant or the farmers only need to give 37% of the proceeds to the landlord. Right? They can keep 15% of proceeds for the harvest as a seeds for next year, and the rest is for for themselves. So they got to keep about 50% for themselves, but also they have the 15%, as seeds, right? So that actually, is pretty good to deal to the farmers, and it will greatly help and contribute to the development of agriculture in Taiwan. Right? The number of people who benefited from this reduction program was 300,000 families, 300,000 farmers families, benefit from that program. That's about half of all the farmers in Taiwan. So if we think about that, this land reform in Taiwan, I think they did really well, did a really good job, right? And also in between 1951 and 1976, the government in Taiwan also initiated something like public land sales, right? They gather the public land that the government does not need anymore, and then they sell them to farmers, right? To farmers, individuals with a loan, very low interest loan. right? Therefore, many more people, farmers, become landowners because they could buy from the government. So that really, eased the tensions between landlord, parents, farmers, peasants, and the governments. Okay? To help great deal with agricultural development in Taiwan. And that also set the economic foundation for Taiwan's freedom and democracy. Okay? The public land sales went down for 9 times, 9 times, about 140,000 hectares of land was sold to about 280,000 farmers' families. Yeah. So that's land reform in Taiwan. Yeah. Unlike the land reform in mainland China under the Chinese communists, which was really brutal. They killed millions of farmers in China, the backbone of Chinese society, right? And the government, the communist government, seized all the land in China, in mainland China. So now, why am I saying they're talking about this? Because if you look at Wuhan, let's go back to today, to Wuhan, to the rent strike by those business owners or tenants. The government refusal to lower the lease, and or reduce the lease rent, and also the government in Taiwan, their willingness to coordinate the reduction in rent and sells the public land to the farmers. We can see that it's really this is the matter, or the issue of the private ownership of the land, right? And it's just a fundamental problem between a communist state, communist country, and free society. So really, so that's the true reason behind the impasse or the conflict in the city of Wuhan today. Okay? That's all I have for this episode of Opinions New by Frank. I'll see you next time.